having a life scholarship and being able to afford to go to college made me feel inspired to go.
When I got a life scholarship, it was such a relief.
I knew that I wanted to have an impact. Having a life scholarship through the SC Education Lottery was huge. It gave me the opportunity to make that impact right here at home.
The South Carolina Education Lottery. A better you, a better us, a better South Carolina. Visit sceducationlottery.com/betteryou.
Support American-made tariff-free clothing with American Giant with American Giant. They aren't affected by tariffs because their clothing products never left the U.S. Get 20% off your first order when you use promo code STAPLE20 at american-giant.com.
Gather round, everyone, and prepare to be swept away by the thrilling exploits of Gino Cuddy, Clive Davis, and Nick Sheehan as they embark on a daring journey across the silent screen. They'll ride through the annals of film history, recounting the captivating saga of the silver screen's very first Western superstar. This, ladies and gentlemen, is Hart to Hart, the William S. Hart podcast.
Hello, everybody. This is Gino Cuddy, and I'd like to welcome you to Hart, a William S. Hart podcast, where me and my two co-hosts are going to be discussing each and every film, at least surviving film, of the late great silent Western cowboy star William S. Hart. This is our first edition, so I figured we'd give some minor introductions to ourselves. I am a film historian as well as a film preservationist. I am also a television producer and personality. I host and produce the television program Sunset Cuddy's Six Gun Theater, a program that discusses and hosts vintage Westerns from the silent era all the way up until the 1950s. I do occasionally write reviews for a blog called blazingjustice.blogspot.com. I know I haven't updated it in some time, but rest assured that there will be some reviews hopefully soon once I get out of this autistic burnout and or depression. And I've also written for the website Cinema Crazed in the past. Look up Western Wednesdays, and you'll find my reviews on cinemacrazed.com. And yeah, I guess. And I also run a YouTube channel called Gino's House of Rare Films, where I have posted numerous classic comedy shorts, feature films from the collection of a Mr. Ralph Celentano. And that's also where Six Gun Theater is hosted. So go and search it out there. And now I'll kick it over to my two other co-hosts. Clive, would you like to introduce yourself, sir?
Yeah, hello there. I'm Clive Davis, and I would like to second the recommendation for Gino's channel, which we have actually spoken about in another show that we do, where we kind of cherry-picked some of the more interesting things that are hosted there. And yeah, that was quite an... In fact, I was thinking we should probably do that
again.
I think there's probably a few more riches there we can talk about. But yeah, anyway, I'm also, a general film fan and very keen to talk about this area of film that I don't know too much about. And Gino kind of managed to convince, because at first he floated the idea of doing it, and I maybe, but then he framed it in a way that I kind of found irresistible, really, was that William S. Hart, which I kind of was vaguely aware of, is kind of the OG kind of Western film hero, really, right? Like, he's very much at the beginning of that lineage, that this whole kind of history of Westerns, the bedrock that it lays on. And I do like a Western, so I thought, yeah, this will probably be a rather fruitful project, which I'm looking forward to get into. Pass the mic.
Before, actually, I'm going to say to give a plug to Clive here. Other than hosting a whole bunch, maybe far too many other shows, many of which include me, Clive has written an enormous volume called The Spine Grinder of kind of capsule film reviews, which is a very useful thing to have on your bookshelf. If you don't have it, you should get it. and there are upcoming volumes in the works.
Checks in the post. Thank you, sir.
No problem. I am also a film fan, unsurprisingly. And yeah, I've done all kinds of weird things, comics. I've made a couple of terrible movies in my past. And the teacher most of the time these days. But I would say for me, this is an area of cinema I know next to nothing about, and so that's one of the reasons I was excited to kind of to dig in. And already, as we're going to talk about today, have already been surprised by maybe seeing where some things that I like. My entryway into the Western comes primarily through Italy, through as a kid watching the Italian Westerns with with my dad, and then becoming really excited about them later on. So I had I think an erroneous image, which we'll unpack a bit later on, about American westerns versus Italian westerns, and already I can see that beginning to like crumble away. But we'll save it when we actually talk about the films, I think. But yeah, so this is already proving to me to be worthwhile because I'm learning stuff, and the films are yeah, they're fun. So we'll talk about them in a second.
So, as our fearless leader,
Hmm.
why don't you, Gino, tell us a little bit more about this William S. Hart fella?
Hmm.
Well, William S. Hart was really one of the first Western film superstars. I mean, of course, there was his predecessor, Bronco Billy Anderson, before him. But Bronco Billy primarily had made short films for studios like S&A, which were studios that he practically built with his bare hands, along with a fellow by the name of George Spohr, and also, made films with Charlie Chaplin. But William S. Hart was really, I think, one of the first stars, one of the first Western stars to really have, basically a deep admiration for the Old West. I mean, he was born in New York, but he basically, after his birth, he basically grew up, in the Old West and really like deeply immersed himself into the culture and made friends basically while other kids his age were playing baseball and other pastimes. He was making friends with, like Indian tribes and such, learning their language and learning their customs and cultures and whatever. And he, also became friends with some famous people within, the Western culture, like Bat Masterson, Wyatt Earp. I believe he might have even been a pallbearer at Wyatt Earp's funeral. And also, he owned a pair of notorious outlaw Billy the Kid's sharpshooters. And so William S. Hart really loved the Old West. He was really passionate about it, and a lot of his films, are not just westerns. They're basically morality plays, and basically, he really actually was one of the first anti-heroes in Western cinema, if not cinema in general. I mean, a lot of his early films, basically he played a good bad man, like an outlaw or a bandit turned, hero, or somebody with, at least in the beginning, a person of questionable character who later redeemed himself into the hero of the piece. And that's certainly on exhibition in the both films that we're going to be discussing tonight. And as far as the order of the films that we're going to be discussing, how we're going to discuss them in sequence, there's actually a book that is sadly woefully out of print. But if you could find a copy for cheap, I highly recommend you picking it up. And it's by Diane Kaiser Kozarski, and it's called The Complete Films of William S. Hart, a Pictorial Record. And it has 256 illustrations. This was, for many years, considered the definitive book on William S. Hart and his films. And the first few films that are in order are The Bargain, which we're going to be discussing tonight, as well as On the Night Stage. There are two films that precede this, unfortunately, that we don't have copies of, and those are His Hour of Manhood and Jim Cameron's Wife. Neither one of those films we have copies of. They may exist, they may not exist. I don't know. But the films that we're going to be starting out on this journey of going through the illustrious career of William S. Hart are The Bargain, which I believe is from 1914, and On the Night Stage, which I believe is from 1915. Let's get into discussing The Bargain.
Like, who is the producer and the director of?
Oh, okay, yeah, it was directed by Reginald Barker, story and screenplay by William H. Clifford and Thomas H. Ince, and photographed by Robert Newhart.
Okay.
It was in production between June 11th and August 5th, 1914, and released on December 3rd, 1914, and reissued by TriStone Pictures on October 12th, 1923. And basically what The Bargain is about.
Ready to make a real impact every day? Join the Active Day Home Care team and help clients maintain their independence in the comfort of their own homes. Make a difference in someone's life as you provide essential daily assistance and protect their health and happiness. Earn up to $20 an hour and enjoy additional perks like optional daily pay, 401k, paid time off, ongoing educational training, and more. Join a team that values care, compassion, and your professional growth. Visit activeday.com to apply.
Riley Herbst from 2311 Racing here, and you know what grinds my gears? Waiting for coffee. But instead of counting frappes and lattes, I fire up Chumba Casino. No apps, no fuss, just fun social casino games to pass the time. By the time my coffee's ready,
order for Riley.
I've already taken a few victory laps. Next time you're stuck waiting, make it entertaining. Play for free at ChumbaCasino.com. Let's Chumba.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Is William S. Hart plays Jim Stokes, the two-gun man, a outlaw who trying to flee the border. First, he actually has a rather humorous stage hold-up just prior to him wanting to flee the scene, in which he erects three dummies with prop guns to hold up the night stage. So he can,
That second, I thought that was a really cool thing to do. I know it was like, given that so early in cinema, I haven't seen it ripped off. I thought it was the kind of thing I would have been, other people would have used that, but it seemed really fresh to me because I haven't seen it. Yeah, I haven't seen it done anywhere else.
Yeah, I should say as well that this takes place in Cochise County, right? That borders Mexico.
Okay.
Right. And so he winds up taking the money from the stage, and he flees. Apparently, this was a long journey because by the time he comes to our other two protagonists, he's in rough shape, and he's found face first into a body of water, and he's brought back to the house of Phil Brent, played by J. Barney Sherry, and his daughter. Nell Brent, played by Claire Williams, and I'm just going to say right here that Claire Williams makes more appearances in more of William S. Hart's films, so she's going to become a face that we're going to become familiar with during this project. And so the cast is Claire Williams as Nell Brent, J. Barney Sherry as Phil Brent, her father, William S. Hart as the two-gun man Jim Stokes, J. Frank Burke as Sheriff Bud Walsh, and rounding out the cast is James Dowling as Reverend Joshua Wilkes. And so once William S. Hart as Jim Stokes arrives to the home of the Brents, he gets nursed up by Claire Williams' character, and over time he starts developing an infatuation for her and starts falling in love with her and wants to reform. And he nearly does. He nearly does go ahead and return the money to the town. But unfortunately, two other characters show up during the wedding of him and Nell Brent. And these two characters recognize him almost immediately as the two-gun man Jim Stokes. And so he winds up going ahead and fleeing to Mexico, where he is apprehended by the sheriff. But here's the problem with the sheriff. The sheriff is kind of a weak-willed individual, and he is unfortunately lulled into a game at a roulette table at the saloon where William S. Hart is being held. And not only does he gamble with his own money, but he also gambles with the money recouped from William S. Hart. So towards the end of the film, he actually enlists William S. Hart to get the money back. So William S. Hart's character gets to make one final heist for totally redeeming himself. So that's essentially the bargain. It's a really good movie. It was actually placed, I believe, on the National Film Registry. It's one of William S. Hart's earliest films, and I believe I think, one of only 2 films that William S. Hart ever did that are on the National Film Registry. So again, it was released December 3rd, 1914, re-released in 1923. And so I like this movie. I think it's really good. I like especially, the ending where the sheriff, in an act of desperation, enlists the criminal to go make a heist so that he could save his bacon.
Yeah, well, I think probably what Nick's might have been alluding to earlier when he was talking about like how things that maybe surprised him. I'm guessing one of the things might be that it's the fact that it isn't the stark black and white, black hat, white hat kind of, the fact that you do have this weak-willed sheriff and everything's slightly more morally ambiguous than you might expect of a film of this vintage. Would I be on the money with that?
Yeah, no, 100% exactly what it is. Yeah, I expected it to be much more a clear binary opposition, good guy, bad guy. Usually law enforcement are, tend to be portrayed as being, like beyond reproach, and the villains are beyond redemption, right? And in this case, it's a much more, morally ambiguous kind of a story. And then, I was funny when like the sheriff suddenly develops like a Dostoevsky-sized gambling problem as soon as he gets to the saloon. I was like, oh, okay, this was yeah. But I also think too, like William S. Hart. I mean, to describe him, like he's like a commanding. He could have played a vampire really well. He's a kind of tall, looming, sallow, long face. Looks like a bit like Iggy Pop.
And you hear that phrase sometimes, raw boned.
Which
I've never really understood before, but I think that's kind of
he's quite sinister looking. He's not like your matinee idol looking guy, right? As I said, I could literally see him as a Christopher Lee type of like.
But he does have that side as well. He had a likable Jimmy Stewart almost kind of thing to him as well. So you can see how he could switch between one and the other. Right?
When we get to the next film, I think he's far more threatening in the next film we're going to talk about. But even here, you still get the sense of like, you can see him. He could have just played a straight up villain. I think very well.
My absolute favorite thing about both these films, and I found just charming as all hell, is the fact, and this isn't unique to these films. I think this is a bit of a trope of the era, but I do like the fact that both films open, with the actors coming out from behind a curtain and getting introduced
in like a tuxedo,
bowing, and then kind of transforming into their characters. That's very well done. But I love that. It's like it's just. It's a nice.
It's very meta. It's very like long before you would ever expect that. It's very like breaking the fourth wall to introduce them in tuxedos, like they've just come from like the Oscars or whatever. And
but also just a general level of, I don't know, kind of politeness or something that seems to have kind of gone out of film culture.
I like that. I made a note. I like that a lot too. But actually,
and the other thing, sorry, and I'll let you go on with it. The other thing, both these films as well. More than anything else, the sense of location, the location work is tremendous. Like, I'm not exactly sure where these things were shot. They seem to have been shot around the same places, really. But they're really kind of like, even the thrown together little towns look very authentic, and so it does have a sense of place, which I found rather potent.
And I had a note here that just says, there's lots of cutting, lots of high angle shots, panoramic shots of the landscape. And I thought, again, quite sophisticated very early on,
People think films of this era is all static shots like stage plays or something. Not the case at all. I mean, yeah, but I mean, less than 20 years from basically the creation of cinema, people have figured out how to do it,
The
right?
language, yeah. The
Yeah.
language of cinema is definitely getting nailed down really fast. Another thing I quite liked was the guy who plays the sheriff, right? Because he's got this kind of drooping black mustache. He looks a bit like Ian McShane out of like Deadwood or something. So again, right away, setting up this thing, like, oh, is he? Who's the good guy? Who's the bad guy? Or do these notions not really, matter in this in the film, right? Actually, the music for me in both of these, because we talked on another show about some of the other silent westerns, and I had kind of complained that it felt to me that the music was a bit arbitrary, like they just literally placed public domain music over the top with little scant regard to what was happening on screen, right? So you ended up with weird scenes that were like kind of threatening and unpleasant, but with kind of fun sounding music. But that was never the case with this. I felt like whoever put the music on these
Yeah.
much more thoughtful about how they did that. And in fact, at one
And
point,
the sound effects as well, like the gunfights and things as
yeah, like that part was definitely well done.
Yeah. How about in your case, because you this is not your first time watching this, for example, I would imagine, and you're a lot more you're ahead of us in so much as you've already seen a lot of the films that we're going to be watching. Or is this should we expect downhill from here, uphill from here, like a general, like where does this fit in the context of the larger William S. Hart, or at least this portion of his career, let's say?
Well, I think it's only uphill from here. I mean, not to say The Bargain is a bad film. I think it's a really good movie, but it is certainly uphill from here. I think over time he was allowed more creative control. He even produces and writes a lot of the films later on, and has more of a
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
pardon me, more of a guiding hand in them. And but the themes in these films are basically almost identical to each other. Like the themes of morality, the themes of I mean, we'll get into this more in the next film, but even religious motifs play factor in the William S. Hart catalog, and more of the good bad man characters and such, and his inner conflict. So yeah, but this film, The Bargain, and the next film we're going to be talking about are basically laying the groundwork for what he would, become famous for, essentially.
There's also an astonishingly when you watch these older films, sometimes I'm always concerned about the horses if they're okay, but there's a scene in this film where his horse gets shot by the posse quite near the end and takes like a horrifying tumble down a mountainside, and I was like, ooh, I hope that horse was all right.
Yeah.
But it's very
sorry to
intense.
break it to you, Nick. Answer is probably no.
Probably not, I know. But at the same time, it's very exciting and very dramatic because it looks obviously very real, because I'm sure it is.
Don't forget, William S. Hart is taking the tumble along with that horse at the same time.
Yeah.
And
I think William S. Hart had a bit more say in it, though.
Yeah.
Yes. But we got paid better as well. You know what?
End up at the glue factory at the end of the day.
I am a sucker for the redemptive power of a good woman kind of story as well, like the bad man who is like brought back to the straight and narrow and so that always appeals to me. So Clive, in answer to your question, it was Williams, Arizona, where The Bargain was filmed.
Okay, all right.
And apparently they did shoot some in the Grand Canyon as well, which I noted in my notes because I recognized the Grand Canyon.
They hadn't got into the habit of just doing California. Then that's interesting. Like William S. Hart clearly does have, like you said, he has a kind of respect and love for the genre, right?
But anyway, but yes, as you were saying before, Gino, we definitely get into a more obvious. I mean, there's maybe an undercurrent of morality and religion, maybe, but it's not it's not out there the way it is going to be in On the Night Stage, where we definitely move into a more clear, yeah. Although again, not so clear. That's what's interesting. Again, it's a little more nuanced than one might guess, I think.
Let's go for On the Night Stage then.
I was reading about the next one on. I found some website, and they were saying like he's like he was fourth or fifth build in this.
Yes,
in
I was surprised by that.
So before we actually get into the next film, and I don't know how much you know about this, Gino, but it'll be more than me. So this Ince fellow, right? And Inceville, right? Which apparently it looks like he had like he basically had. Again, I'm on Wikipedia. Yeah, this is kind of interesting to me. So like obviously he and Hart had some sort of they tied up, right? And they start making films together, right? So what exactly is Ince's role in all? Is he just producer? Is he, I mean, you mentioned he wrote the script or he was one of the script writers for the previous film, right?
Yeah, he was one of the early film producers. I believe he also produced some films with Oliver Hardy and did some comedies as well. So yeah, he was like one of the early pioneer film producers, in America at least. And I guess something that we could talk about, like later on down the road is, and something that I could read into, because there actually is William S. Hart did actually pen his autobiography. It's called My Life, East and West, which is a book that I think we should talk about at some point. Maybe towards the end of this project, we could do like book club, William S. Hart edition, and read his autobiography, because at some point he and Ince do have a falling out,
right?
And I believe it's like over money or some sort of an agreement, and or creative control. I'm not exactly sure on what the cause was. But they do have a falling out at some point, and Hart breaks away and starts producing his own films.
Right.
So that's something that we could certainly discuss down the line. But for now, let's talk about On the Night Stage.
We should say it opens up in exactly the same way as the previous one, with that wonderful scene of the stage.
Yes.
Yeah, well, before we get to that, let me just run down some of the information here. It was produced by the New York Motion Picture Company under the supervision of Thomas H. Ince, distributed by Mutual, or like a Mutual Master Picture. In production, it was in production between August 6th and September 2nd, 1914. It was released on April 15th, 1915. And it was reissued by TriStone Pictures on December 4th, 1923. It was directed by Reginald Barker, story and screenplay by C. Gardner Sullivan, who will be a common name that you will see during this program. C. Gardner Sullivan, who wrote a lot of Hart's films, and Thomas H. Ince. And it was photographed by Robert Newhart. The cast includes Robert Edison, who plays the Sky pilot Alexander Austin, Bria Mitchell, who plays Belle Shields, William S. Hart, who is third billed in this film as Silent Texas Smith, Herschel Mayall plays Handsome Jack Malone, Gladys Brockwell plays another saloon girl, and rounding out the cast is Shorty Hamilton, who plays a cowboy. Okay. So On the Night Stage is a very interesting film from a story aspect, in that, spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen the film, but Hart actually doesn't really win at the end like he did in the previous film, The Bargain.
Spoiler alert, but you have had 110 years, so
Yes, yeah, you've had lots of time to get to this. Yeah.
Also, I just put, I think probably shot on the same location as The Bargain as well. I'm guessing it looks very similar. Yeah.
So let's get into the plot. On the Night Stage, a minister comes to town, and he's called the Sky Pilot. And when I initially saw this, I, being the autistic man that I am, I took that literally and I thought, oh, are we going to get some aerial photography in this? I had no idea it was a metaphorical, sort of, phrasing that Hart was using in this.
Had you not heard that piece of slang before? The
No, I
sky
had
pilot.
not.
Ah, okay, interesting.
It's funny. I thought about it too because initially I was like, oh, because I think I'd read it before, but then there was a part of me that was like, it's weird, because like, what other kind of pilots are there, right? Other than those, but
A
obviously
submersible pilot.
yeah, but
apologies to all submersible pilots for insensitivity from Nick there.
Right, but I mean, at the time this film is set, there shouldn't be. This is pre, I assume, the Wright brothers, right? Like this is the 18. I assume it's the 1800s at some point, right? So yeah, so I took a little bit. I was like, oh, hang on, there aren't any planes. It must be the term for a priest or a religious figure. But anyway,
and see, that's what I love about Hart's films is that they use metaphorical language like that. They're not, like this guy's a priest. No, they call him a sky pilot because that's how intelligent Hart is. I love it. Much more intelligent filmmaker than he's given credit for. Anyway, so yeah, a sky pilot or a minister comes to town and he witnesses William S. Hart's character Texas being an abusive asshole, basically, to his girlfriend Belle, and the priest, takes her aside and says, "Do you really want to keep living this life and living with this guy and everything else?" And so they wound up having a long-winded conversation, and then William S. Hart comes over and he's like, "You and me are going dancing," and she's like, "I don't want to dance," and then he grabs her by the wrist and is like, "We're going dancing."
Yeah.
He's
a lot scarier in this one than he is in the previous one. Like from beginning to end, he's quite a threatening, unpleasant guy.
Right. And while I was watching this, I was like, truly there must be, like that turn off point, like where he does redeem himself. And, I was like breathing a sigh of relief that there was, because, I'm not a guy that wants to see William S. Hart playing a truly despicable character because I like him so much. So yeah, for pretty much the first half of this film, he's really a rough character towards women, and that might put some people at unease nowadays, considering the culture we're living in. So Belle and the priest eventually fall in love with each other. And
it's not a Catholic priest, so this guy's allowed to. He's a pastor of some kind. It's fine for him to have a girlfriend and a wife.
Yeah. And so at some point during the film, William S. Hart and a bunch of the other rough-looking characters in the local saloon wind up getting into a bit of a fist fight, and it wound up becoming a
bit of a fist fight.
Yeah,
this is a hell of a brawl.
Okay. I'm being a little too generous there.
Yeah,
it's a good scene.
There's a lot of haymakers and a room full of people. It looks kind of it looks quite dangerous, actually.
And I quite like that,
really good.
that Hart gets like properly beaten up, because this is another thing that to me is something that really shows up again in that kind of Clint Eastwood version of the West, right? Like where the hero has to take a really solid beating in order for us to kind of like, feel like he's in danger, right? Or feel like
to sort of gain our sympathy. Yeah.
And this is a very, very early version of that, long before the kind of the 60s. So yeah, it's a cool scene. And then it turns out our priest or whatever, our pastor is.
So the pastor essentially saves William S. Hart's bacon in that scene, and over time they become friends. And Hart sees to it that the priest and Belle become happy.
Bubba Wallace here from 2311 Racing. Funny thing about being fast, you end up waiting a lot. First to show up, first in line, then just waiting. Me, I rev up Chumba Casino. With over 200 social casino games, no slow lanes here. Why sit around when you can spin? I'm already racing. Your turn. Play for free at ChumbaCasino.com. Let's Chumba.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
However, there's a monkey wrench thrown in when Belle goes and visits one of her former friends in the city, and she winds up being tempted by handsome Jack Malone, and he outright gives her a big slobbery kiss right on her mouth.
I like the
Which
title. The title card is just revulsion. Like,
yeah,
it's quite
yeah.
nice. She's like, "Oh."
So, Hart, hears about this, becomes enraged. So he, winds up confronting her and saying, I did nothing wrong. It was this guy and my friend who I thought was my friend, and everything. And so he winds up going into the city and confronting the dance hall girl. And a very frightening scene happens
Yeah, I
where,
was going to say that's quite late in the film. We kind of think he's a good guy, and he's suddenly right back to scaring the hell out of like he's throttling this woman. You're like, whoa, settle down, Hart. That's too much. That's too much, buddy.
yeah, the part that got me was like before that happens is he's like, I came here to talk to Jack Malone, but I guess you'll do. And like grabs her by the wrist and they go off stage left, and that was like, ooh,
Yes.
and again I was like at unease, like this is, he's going to at some point like make the switch, right? I mean,
Right.
if he
Be
hasn't
a good
already.
guy.
So he winds up having a rough tussle with her, throws her to the ground. Then he goes in search of Jack Malone, and he finds Jack Malone, takes him from the stage, orders the stage drivers to keep on driving, and basically leads Jack Malone, out into the middle of nowhere and says, "Keep walking and don't ever come back." Which is something that we'll actually see more of in another Hart film later on. So I thought that was interesting. He basically tells the guy to go out and basically starve himself to death because that's what it's assumed has happened to this guy, because it's like we never hear from him again. We don't know what happened to him. So it's just, led to the audience's assumption that this guy eventually, passed out and died from starvation from, just walking out into the middle of nowhere for so long. So Hart goes back, and I guess everything's fine between her and the priest. And Hart gives a look to her, and she looks at him, and he's like, "The job has been done," you know. So it's like, okay, and so he goes to his horse. The horse in the film is called Midnight, which is interesting because Hart wasn't one of these cowboys who had the Tom Mix and his Wonder Horse Tony. It wasn't like that. So William S. Hart, but his Hart was unofficial. William S. Hart called his horse Fritz, but his horse wasn't called Fritz on camera. Okay. So
Midnight, of course, being short for Dead by Midnight, his full name.
Today's watch of the bargain was the second watch for me, so I kind of knew what to expect. With this one, I didn't know what to expect. So this was genuinely like an interesting watch for me. I mean, to be clear, I haven't seen all of Hart's films, but I've seen enough of them where I'm like interested in pursuing this project. I quite again, this is a film that moves on at a good clip. It's just such a shame that not a better print exists of this. This has actually been ripped from my rather voluminous Alpha video collection, and as such, the music is plastered on from God knows where, and the print isn't the best. But I think it's watchable enough where we can garner what's going on. I mean, the bargain was a much better.
Sorry, I know some purists like to have a go at Alpha Video, but I think sometimes they tend to forget, well, at least they have put this stuff out there.
Oh, I agree. Oh, I'm definitely an Alpha Video apologist, definitely.
Yeah.
And I didn't find the music to be too like distracting. Again, it wasn't like it didn't suit what was going on around it. And in fact, at one point, I don't know if it's this one or the previous one, but they even play a bit of the wedding march at an appropriate moment. I was like, okay, well, they have thought it through. It's not just.
Well, with the bargain, in the bargain, that was actually an original composed score, for Grapevine Video.
Oh, that makes
That's
more
why.
sense. Okay. But even with the stage, I didn't find myself pushed out of the film by inappropriate musical cues. So. I do love the last line. So yeah, so I mean, as you were saying, he doesn't get the girl, right? So it kind of defies certain genre expectations, right? You kind of think, oh, well, if he has turned if he's turned a new leaf and if he's a good guy now, well, maybe he will get the girl that he loves. But that's not what this film does, right? She stays with with the pastor guy. So his last line is he goes out and he puts his arm around his horse and he's like, I ain't got nobody but you, Midnight. It's like a strange, sad little moment at the end of the film. Just me and my horse, and the end. Um, I I dug that. That was cool. But yeah, he
Yeah,
definitely
I mean,
scarier than you would think. I just go
it's
ahead.
interesting to see a film where William S. Hart takes a bit of a backseat. It's kind of interesting. But yeah, overall, just as a viewing experience, I think the bargain is probably the one to go for if you're easing your way into this
Hmm.
territory, right? I would say maybe this is slightly, when you've gone around the block a few times and you're into William S. Hart, then
Mhm.
yeah, give this a go because it shows you a bit of his range, right? But it's not necessarily a
What
gateway drug.
range that is, I'm telling you.
Yeah, yeah, but it's not a gateway drug, right? This one, I don't think.
No, no, it's probably, it's more or less in the middle of his filmography for me. I mean, I don't think William S. Hart ever really made a bad movie, but I think that this one's like middle of the road. Like it's not really one you want to be introduced to, because if you were to be introduced to William S. Hart via this film and seeing what he does to women in this film, you'd be like, yeah, I'm not sure I want to see another film with this guy in it. So,
Um, I did like. I always do like an ass kicking priest. That's something ever since whatever. What's the Dead Alive, right?
Brain Dead.
Yeah, Brain Dead. Yeah, yeah, yes,
Yes.
yeah. So yeah, that's because I don't think we were very clear when we talked about that part. So it's not like the priest comes in and rescues him by like giving a sermon in that scene in the bar. He just rolls up his sleeves and wades into the bar fight, and he acquits
yes.
himself fairly well, right? But
He
that
he definitely wouldn't be reticent to kick Bishop Brennan up the arse.
No, no, yes, that was yes. And so,
Yes.
but that actor, so Robert Edison, I guess he's in The Prisoner of Zenda as well. Um, and I guess so in some ways, apparently he was at that time when the film was made, he was the bigger draw. Like he was more famous than Hart.
Yeah, well, I'm just wondering about, is it a coincidence? I don't know him, but that second name. Ah, no, hang on. It's spelled differently. There we
Yeah,
go.
it's
It's
not
Edison, right?
Edison
It's,
with an
yeah,
E.
right. Okay, okay. But, because you forget as well when all this was started back in the day, Hollywood was a small
Oh,
town.
you thought he might have been related to
Yeah,
Thomas
but
Thomas
Edison?
Edison.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean,
yeah, no, I'm looking it up here, and yeah, he was in quite a few things, including Eric von Stroheim movie. Um, One question I have for you, actually, Gino, is whether you've ever visited the William S. Hart Museum.
I'd like to. As I understand it right now, it's closed, I think, or
Ah,
the
okay.
sit or this or I think that the state's trying to buy it, or there's some sort of like real estate tussle going on, and all I gotta say on that is keep it a museum, keep it the way he wanted it to be treated. Like he wanted it to sort of be like a memorial not only to his film accomplishments but to early film, and have it donated to the arts and all that stuff. Don't let this become like yet another Starbucks or another In-N-Out burger, please. That's all I gotta ask. Because it's like, he donated this land to the state of California so that, it could be used, to, not only educate about film history and his film history in particular, but also, I mean, there's also the grounds. I
Yeah,
mean, you're talking about the same land where he filmed his farewell address and the sound ratio with tumbleweeds. So it's historic land,
right.
and even in that regard. So it's like, just keep it the way it is. Reopen the museum, and keep the grounds open and everything else, and just keep it as is, because places like that are few and far between, unfortunately, in this world. And I'm hoping that it doesn't become a case of, I read this in a YouTube comment some years ago, and I find it to be true in a lot of cases, that history and culture mean nothing to the vultures, and that all they see is money. And I'm hoping that that doesn't become a case with this. So if
Also, looking at Wikipedia, this thing about events says, since 2021, the Educational Cultural Learning Department of the Fernandino Tataviam Band of Mission Indians government have partnered with the William S. Hart Museum to host the annual traveling Tataviaviat Acorn Harvest Museum program. The event educates the public on the indigenous history of the Santa Clarita Valley while demonstrating traditional methods of harvesting and processing the acorns of coast live oak into acorn flour. So there you are. Something
beautiful. I mean, the grounds are amazing. If you Google it, the William S. Hart Museum, the grounds are gorgeous. The building itself is incredible. So yeah, I certainly hope that it.
I've always wanted to visit Corriganville. I don't know if it's still there.
Yeah, me too.
What crashed?
Go visit my friend Steve Latshaw at Lone Pine, the Western Film Museum over there.
Right.
Awesome. I've never been. It's funny. I've only been to I've only ever been to the Los Angeles airport in California. I've spent much more time in Arizona. I've been to the OK Corral and which was amazing. So that's my gateway to the American West is definitely more Arizona, and then
my image of OK Corral as well is it's much less grand than you, isn't it? Just basically like a pigsty between some houses.
Although obviously they've kind of they've gutted it up a little bit now, for tourists. But it's
do they have an acorn festival?
Not that I'm aware of, but they have a really cool Boot Hill little graveyard there, which has got great grave markers with awesome, it's worth visiting for just the grave.
Is Arch Stanton buried there?
I don't maybe. I don't know. Who is Arch Stanton, Clive?
Isn't Arch Stanton, isn't that one of the names on it's either the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, or it's one of the dollars, because it's Jim Wynorski used to use it as a pseudonym.
Okay, right. So is that where the gold is buried under his grave?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I should know
that. We'll wind up here then, I guess. Anything we've forgotten to mention, Gino?
Well, do you guys have any final thoughts on the night stage?
No, like I said, for me, the bargain's more the one of the pick of the two this time. Nothing against on the night stage.
So I do have a question, but I'm probably getting ahead of myself. So when I was reading about this, a few people compared it to Hell's Hinges, which I haven't seen yet, but kind of suggested.
Yeah, I could see that comparison because I've seen Hell's Hinges. That's sort of laying the groundwork for what, I was even thinking of that actually when I watched this, is that, a film like this is certainly, well, not a landmark film in his filmography, certainly is laying the groundwork for that landmark film of Hell's Hinges.
That maybe, in a way, maybe Hell's Hinges comes back to the same material, but maybe explores it more effectively.
That's
what you're saying. Okay.
And on a much bigger scale. I can't wait till we actually get to that, which it's going to be a little while yet, I think, before we get to that. But I can't wait until we get to that because I can't wait to see both of your reactions. You might have seen it, Clive, but I'm not. I don't know if Nick has seen it. You've never seen Hell's Hinges either. Okay. So, everybody, thank you all for joining us for this edition of Hart to Hart, the William S. Hart podcast. I have been Gino Cuddy, that has been Clive Davis, and that has been Nick. And again, if you'd like to donate to the PayPal link will be in the description below. And keep the memory of William S. Hart alive, because he is the true blue, red, white, and blue star of silent Western cinema.
This has been a Gino Cuddy podcast production.
Breaking news news from the stadium tonight as an anonymous fan foot the bill for 55,000 hot dogs, bringing that sweet tubed meat to everyone in attendance.
Free dogs! Yeah!
55,000 hot dogs? What does that even cost? While the identity of this Frankfurter philanthropist remains anonymous, their all-beefy generosity will go down in history.
The new Mega Millions. More to win means more to give. How you spend it is up to you. Yeah!
For game odds and details, visit SCEducationLottery.com.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No